Welcome everybody. Tim and I are going to be working on implementing a missing feature or maybe correcting a bug. I don't really even know how we would categorize this in Effect workflow. So I'll let Tim maybe describe it a little bit more, but the gist of it is that we're going to be fixing something where if you run a workflow as a child workflow inside an existing workflow, the child will, what does it hang, Tim? Like it'll block, or what's the issue?
So if you had a child workflow that ran for a long period of time, like workflows could run for months if you wanted them to. So at the moment, if you ran a child workflow that ran for a month inside of a parent workflow, then the parent one would stay in memory for a month. So what we need to do is suspend the parent workflow and then wake it back up when the child workflow finishes.
Cool. So I guess we'll start the stream by implementing a small reproducer of the problem. So Tim and I will basically implement a tiny workflow that reproduces the problem, and then we'll work on a fix, and we'll see then by rerunning the workflow whether or not the fix works. So we'll return to the stream in a month after our workflow is done.
Right. Workflow listing. So I cooked up a little example for us to test with. So we have an email workflow and a child workflow. And then implementation. So the email workflow starts, then executes another workflow, and then completes. And then the child workflow starts, does a durable sleep for 30 seconds. So that will suspend the workflow, wait approximately 30 seconds, and then it will wake up again, and then finish. And that should say something else like, yep. And then here's just the boilerplate to attach it to the cluster. So let's run that now and see what it looks like. So what do we need to do? So we need Postgres. We need the shard manager. So we've got the shard manager. Let's run the workflow. So starting the email workflow, starting the child workflow, and then it'll be sleeping for 30 seconds. Maybe we should have made it shorter.
At least you didn't make it a month.
Yeah. But you can already see that oh no, you can't see. If the parent workflow is suspended, then we would see the email workflow start again. So we can see that the child workflow suspended because then it attempted to execute it again. And there we go. So we can see that the email workflow never suspended. When a workflow suspends, it kind of like stops it. And then it just becomes like a database entry. And then when it resumes, it like executes the entire workflow again. But if you had wrapped stuff in activities, then they will not run again. Let's make that 10. And just to kind of like explain the suspension semantics, the first time this workflow would run, we get that starting child workflow log, and then it will hit this durable clock.sleep, and that will suspend the workflow. So the workflow is kind of like stopped at this point, and then 10 seconds later, it will start again. We'll get this log, and because this is now complete, it will then proceed past and make it to this log, and then complete. So that's kind of like suspension.
So with a workflow like this, like when you create the implementation of a workflow, unless you're wrapping pieces of it in activities, the whole workflow will be re-executed, like if it ever suspended, right?
Yeah. So you design workflows in a way that it's very much expected that they will run multiple times until they're completed, especially if you're intentionally suspending it, but also if like the machine crashed, then it would also run again. So you like wrap stuff in activities that you only want to happen once. So you go make, give it a name, do stuff, and then you can put the code in effect.
And the idea is that an activity is
only run once. Yeah.
The idea is that an activity is idempotent.
Yes.
Cool.
And the slide name is the thing that's used to identify and persist the state. So on the second run, it will then use like the persisted result instead of actually running this. So the first time it runs, it will run this. This will return, let's say we wanted to return a string. It will do success, student string. It will save the string into the database. So the next time it runs, it will just grab it straight from the database and not run the log. So that's workflows in a nutshell. But the feature we want to implement is this causing a suspend if this suspends. So I think the first thing we need to do is like identify whether we're inside of another workflow and then like branch out and do something different. And execute is defined in the workflow module, I think. Execute DOE. So we get the payload, we get the engine, we get the execution ID, annotate any spans. I guess, yeah, if they execute with discard, then this is still what we would do because it will always return immediately. well, it will turn once the request has been persisted. But this is where we kind of want to skip this loop. So currently, if our workflow is suspended, so it can either be complete or suspended, it will do like a retry loop until it's complete.
Cool.
So what we want to do different is, if we're inside of a workflow, then kind of like propagate the suspense up.
Is there anything in the environment that would tell you whether or not there's a parent workflow present, at least at the moment?
Yeah, we can do parent instance equals effect.service option instance tag. So we now have an option of the parent instance. Yeah, so I guess the first step would be, I guess we can just persist this. Effect. And that becomes from if option. Actually, I think we're using the LSP fancy features now. Schema.
Freaking schema.
Nice.
Love it.
If it is then we get the results. I just need to trigger my memory on how we do suspends. Durable, deferred, const await. Wrap activity results. Okay, we just need to do that then. Wrap activity result run. Okay. And what will that do? It does like the bookkeeping for suspended activities. Does it say it suspended? So if the result is a suspend, then we set suspended to true and fire an interrupt. Otherwise, we just return it. If result, current instance.value dot suspended is true. And we want to interrupt, otherwise we yield result.exit.
You're going to have to walk me through what's going on here in a minute.
Cool. Okay. So we work out if we're inside of another workflow by accessing the instance tag. Maybe we'll just move that up there for now. If we are inside of another workflow, then we kind of like branch out into a different branch where we check the result if it's suspended, and if it is, we kind of like propagate that up. And the way you do that is setting the suspended flag to true and then interrupting.
Okay.
So the interrupt is what causes the short circuiting of the workflow. And this flag helps like the workflow detect if the interrupt was suspension was the cause of the interrupt. So that's how it works out. If it's like an actual interrupt versus like a suspended interrupt.
Got it.
This is kind of like an implementation detail where like it's possible you have like multiple activities running in parallel, and it will only fire the interrupt if all of the activities have kind of like reached a point where they've where they're like all finished.
Got it. Okay.
So it means like if you're like racing multiple things that could suspend, it'll at least wait until all of them have kind of like reached a point of settling before proceeding. But it's more of like an implementation detail, but conceptually it's kind of like the same as that. You run parent workflow, if it's suspended, propagate the interruption. So I think this will get us part of the way there. And I guess we can run it just to see. PG client. Right.
Excuse me.
Yeah, of course it's to the divide and potency, it's not going to run again. So we'll just increment our ID. So start of the email workflow, Angel workflow, sleeping for a few seconds. And then it'll wake up. And the child workflow will complete. But the missing piece now is we now need to wake up the parent workflow. It's still a suspended state right now, I'm guessing. And we can verify that by looking at the database table. So we're looking for email workflow run, this one. Oh, we want to look at the replies. Yeah, so it's still suspended. So what we need to do now is work out how to resume the parent workflow. I'm guessing the only way to do that is to pass down the information. So here we'll probably need to do parent workflow instance. So when we run a workflow, it could have a parent.
Right.
And we then need to persist that somewhere. Okay. And if it does have a parent, when we resume the workflow, we need to wake up that parent. Or when the child workflow finishes. So that is done in the workflow engine. So we go to the cluster workflow engine. And execute is where, yeah. Parent. Currently run, this takes a straight payload. Where is it here? So it does look like we're going to have to make a breaking change to the schema. But that's fine. We're still in alpha.
Very alpha. Very alpha. I can't tell you the number of times I've broken the AI libraries to fix something. So, what alpha's for.
What information do we need to resume a workflow? Resume. So we just need to track enough information that we can resume it. So we just need an identifier for the workflow, so we can just call the workflow name and the execution ID. So we'll update this to payload workflow.payload schema, and then parent, which is a schema to optional schema struct workflow name and execution ID. Okay. And I think that's enough.
Nice.
Okay. Oops. Cluster workflow engine. So now we need to update our run. Payload. It will just be a type of schema line. Alright. So where is our run? Yeah. That'll be request.payload.payload now. Let's leave it as AD. And then where else are we using that? West, no way. So in here, we'll need to potentially wake up a parent. So if it didn't suspend, we don't have to do anything because it will just go straight to completed. Oh, no, we don't. No, we have to do it regardless. This we don't know if this is what attempt this is. This could be the second time it runs.
This is the thing that actually runs the logic for the workflow.
The actual workflow, yeah. So this is what runs the user logic, and this is like bookkeeping,
Right.
So this is like there's like a built-in interrupt signal. So if you cancel a workflow, this is what ensures like all the finalizers are properly run.
Okay.
Here's the clock. So I think we just need to add another finalizer.
Mattia just posted a chat saying, maybe instead of a parent workflow, there could be a durable deferred token in the initial run request that gets automatically completed when the workflow run completes, so that the caller can create that durable deferred and you get resume for free of the caller upon child completed. Doesn't that mean that the user has to create the deferred then, though?
Yeah, I kind of want it to just work transparently.
Yeah, I think I'd rather not the user not have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Since the behavior is well defined, it'd be better for us to try.
Yeah, we can just go request a parent and then add init sharing, otherwise identity. Suspend. Oh, we can just chuck in our resume here, I guess. Suspend. So here we only have the workflow names, so we need to get the parent workflow, which is, we have all our registrations up here somewhere. Workflows.
Matthias says you can hide that in the API variant that requires, though. I don't think I understand. Not sure I understand with you. You elaborate.
So if the parent workflow hasn't been registered at that point.
No, the point, Mattia, that we're making is this is that we're not, there is no API variant. Like, the idea is that you can execute children workflows within parents transparently, and if the child suspends, the parent will suspend. And resume without you having to do anything as the user. I'm still not 100% sure I'm understanding you 100, like totally understanding you. You may have mean something different to what I'm understanding. We should not stop yawning.
Okay. I think that's all we need.
Are insurings uninterruptible? Did we go through this already?
Yeah, they are. Ensuring is a wraparound or similar to on exit. It's an uninterruptible.
I feel like I went through this once with something with the runtime flags. But anyway.
So if this workflow has a parent, then we add a finalizer that sends a resume message to the parent. Maybe we can improve this to only do that if the result is completed. So we change this to an on exit. And then exit. And we have exit or result never. And then we need to check if it is a suspend. If it is suspended, return effect.void, otherwise resume the parent.
Cool.
Right, let's try it. Let's see what else we broke. Identity, effect identity. There you go, Mattia, you need to fix it. It should be identity from effect function. It's what are the type errors do we have? Oh, we're not actually using it. So we need to put payload in here and then parent. Cool. So we just changed the database schema, so we need to, let's just restart Postgres. And we need our shard manager again. Shard and shard. So an email, send shard. At least they're still working. Didn't work. Cost. I have a feeling we're not actually passing the parent.
I think you're right.
But he. Yeah. Good. We might have a race edition. That worked.
It's cool. Were you worried about when the
Nice.
email workflow started back up, the child not being done?
Yeah.
I was worried about that too as I watched the logs coming in. But so
I just need to think about that a bit more. So we do here. So if the parent resumes that before the result is persisted, then it could miss the result. And there is a way around it, I think. We'll just need to add a message type called resume parent to the entity. And because entities have a concurrency of 1, we can ensure that the message is processed after the result is persisted. So kind of like queue up the resumption of the parent.
That makes sense. Would that also help us address the fact that a parent could have multiple children executing concurrently? Like right now, one of the other race conditions I can see is like, yeah, this child finishes and then tells the parent to resume, but there could be other children executing concurrently, right?
That's fine because they will also tell it to resume. The parent will just get run probably multiple times. As long
But
as the final child to finish like properly resumes the parent, that's okay.
Okay.
So we have run an activity. I don't know if I run deferred activity. Let's run create a resume. Success will be void. Okay. So this message will be for resuming other workflows. And we can ensure it happens after this result is persisted. Actually, I don't think we need that priority. Because there's only ever one parent. So we can just use the namespace of the workflow itself. The primary key get prefixed with the entity ID. So primary keys are always unique to like the entity instance.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case,
I got it. They're only a reviewing parent, so the primary key will just do the parent's ID. Clear.
Yeah. So let's use that instead. Just add it to our client type.
Does that mean we can get rid of the parent stuff in the run method, or do we still need that?
We still need to send the message in the
Right.
We can probably just pull this out somewhere. To general, let's resume parent. So this will need the workflow name and execution ID. Then I'll need copy paste that stuff. This will be a bit more involved now. So we now need to get the client for the parent. Instead of calling this resume thing directly. And to get, or maybe to get rid of this type error, we can just quickly implement the resumed handler or resume parent.
Then why are you coding on half a screen?
What's that?
Then why are you coding on half a screen?
I'm used to constraints. So we then pass the request of that idea. I'm going to syntax here though. All right. Okay.
So what is the logic of resume parent doing again? This handler.
So it needs to be updated, but it will look up the workflow definition and then resume it with the execution ID. Oh, this is fun. Cool. So now we rename this to send resume parent. So we're very similar to a deferred done where we get client and then send a message to it. And we can use the workflow instance tag here. And this will be for the chromosomes. And then we need to scope this. And then here we can run client.resume parent options. Discard. So what this will do is queue up the message and not like wait for it. Otherwise we would have like a deadlock.
Yeah, just like a fire and forget.
Yeah. And then now over here we use the new thing. Send resume parent. And then here we can use request payload.parent. Okay. So that should guard against our races.
Guard against the races.
Let's try it. So what should happen now is the child workflow will finish. And just before it completes, it will queue up a message to resume the parent. It will complete. Once it's completed, process the parent resumption message. And then the parent will resume.
Nice.
And we look at the database tables, there'll be a lot of noise. Maybe we'll just wipe it, run it again and have a look. Postgres client. So we have the run. And there's the resume parent message. The child workflow run. And then we can see here the durable sleep and like the durable deferred. That's the durable deferred that kind of like backs the sleep. And that's the kind of like sleep resumption. And then we look at the replies. You know what's good? All right, I think that's everything. We probably just need to add some tests for it. And there might be some tests that are now broken because we changed the schema. So there's no testing there. The tests are in cluster. Cluster workflow engine, the test.
One thing we should probably test before we finish up this PR is children, like concurrent children in the parent.
Concurrent children. So if you do like a effect all.
Yeah.
I guess we can just show that with this.
Maybe we can lower the sleep time as well.
Well, it shouldn't matter because they all happen concurrently, right?
I don't know, just 10 seconds is a long time to wait. Like you're double yielding.
Well, that's it. Oh, because we're yielding them here. So we've got 2 child workflows. Sleeping, I wake up. Nice. Maybe we'll make one sleep for longer. So I'm going to sleep for 5 seconds. So it resumed the parent workflow, but then it suspended again. And then the second one completed and resumed it. But at that point, everything was completed.
Nice. I wonder if there's a way we can track how many children a parent has and prevent it from waking up if there are still children executing like entirely. Not that it really matters, but that would be a nice quality of life thing.
Yeah. It's more of an optimization we can do at some later point, I think. Maybe we can just commit that. Suspend parent workflows. Execute. Cool, do you want to finish there?
Yeah, that's good.
I'll write the test later.
Nice 1 hour long stream. Got this feature in, fixed an issue. Yeah. So I hope everybody enjoyed the quick stream today. Thank you everybody for joining. Yeah, we'll see you folks next week probably.
See ya.
Cheers, everybody.